Gideon Flint had tested hundreds of strangers who knocked on his door over the years. Some were thieves, some liars, some desperate souls in need of help. But when the two sisters arrived, soaked from the storm, their eyes burning with something unspoken, Gideon felt a shift. They weren't here by accident. The older sister spoke softly, yet her words carried weight. "We know what happened in San Felipe." The name froze Gideon's blood. San Felipe, the town he had left behind, the fire, the screams, the night he never dared to remember. "You've mistaken me for someone else," Gideon said, his hand tightening around the whiskey glass. The younger one shook her head. "No. You're the man who wore the silver star. You're the one who let them die." Silence filled the cabin, broken only by the howling wind outside. For the first time in years, Gideon Flint felt the noose of his past tightening. He had always believed he could outdrink, outshoot, or outweight his demons. But tonight, two strangers carried his truth across the storm, and he couldn't shake the feeling that tonight he might be the one being tested. The younger sister whispered something in Apache, and her words hit him like a physical blow. Gideon hadn't heard that language spoken in years, not since the massacre. The syllables scraped at his memory, each one like a shovel digging up bones he had tried to bury. He swallowed hard. "Where did you learn those words?" The older sister's gaze didn't waver. "From our mother. She told us to find the man who hid behind the law, but turned his back on the people." Gideon set his glass down, his hands trembling. The rain outside turned into a torrent, hammering the roof, filling the silence between them with a rhythm like a funeral drum. "You think I had a choice?" Gideon's voice cracked with a mixture of anger and guilt. "Do you think I could have stopped it? I was one man against Morrison and his gang. One man." "But you were wearing the star," the younger one said, her voice sharp as a knife. "One man with a choice." Her words struck deeper than any bullet. Gideon's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the truth was heavier than the storm raging outside. What truth? What lie? And why had they tracked him down after all these years? "Tomorrow," Ayanna whispered, "when the storm ends, we tell him everything." The words hung in the cabin like smoke. Gideon's pulse quickened. Everything? What more could there be beyond the nightmares that already haunted him? He shifted uneasily in his chair, trying to mask the fear creeping through his veins. "You've already said enough." "I know what I did. I know what I didn't do." Kaya, the younger, leaned forward, her eyes burning. "No, you only know part of it. You think you were just a coward, a man too weak to stand against Morrison. But you don't realize what you became after that night." The room seemed to shrink. Gideon gripped the arms of his chair. "What are you talking about?" Ayanna's face hardened. "You weren't just a witness." "You were part of it," Gideon shot to his feet. "That's a lie." But the sisters didn't flinch. Kaya's voice cut through the storm like a blade. "The fire didn't stop with San Felipe. Morrison used your silence. He used your badge. Every raid, every killing after that night, he told people the law was on his side. He told them Deputy Flint had his back." Gideon staggered as if struck. His denial faltered on his lips. Could it be true? Had his silence fueled more bloodshed than he ever imagined? "You weren't just a coward," Ayanna said coldly. "You were an accomplice to murder." "Tomorrow," Ayanna whispered. "When the storm ends, we tell him everything." The words hung in the cabin like smoke. Gideon's pulse quickened. Everything? What more could there be beyond the nightmares that already haunted him? He shifted uneasily in his chair, trying to mask the fear creeping through his veins. "You've already said enough." "I know what I did. I know what I didn't do." Kaya, the younger, leaned forward, her eyes burning. No, you only know part of it. You think you were just a coward? A man too weak to stand against Morrison? But you don't realize what you became after that night. The room seemed to shrink. Gideon gripped the arms of his chair. What are you talking about? Ayanna's face hardened. You weren't just a witness. You were part of it, Gideon shot to his feet. That's a lie. But the sisters didn't flinch. Kaya's voice cut through the storm like a blade. The fire didn't stop with San Felipe. Morrison used your silence. He used your badge. Every raid, every killing after that night. He told people the law was on his side. He told them Deputy Flint had his back. Gideon staggered, as if struck. His denial faltered on his lips. Could it be true? Had his silence fueled more bloodshed than he ever imagined? You weren't just a coward, Ayanna said coldly. You were an accomplice to murder. Dawn crept through the small window, painting the cabin walls in shades of gray. The storm had passed, but inside Gideon's chest the thunder still raged. He hadn't slept, only sat by the dying fire, replaying the sisters' accusations until they carved into his soul. When the first rays of light touched the floorboards, he knew he couldn't run anymore. He strapped on his holster, though the weight of the revolver felt heavier than ever. Each bullet inside carried not just lead, but judgment. The sisters were waiting for him at the table, calm, as if they had been expecting him to rise with the dawn. Ayanna's hands rested on a small leather pouch. Kaya's fingers drummed against the wood, steady, certain. What's in the pouch? Gideon asked, his voice hoarse. Ayanna pushed it across the table. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside lay a strip of scorched fabric, the remains of a deputy's badge, burned and blackened, but still faintly showing the silver star. Gideon's knees weakened. He remembered tearing it from his chest in San Felipe, throwing it into the flames. But somehow they had found it. Somehow it had survived, just like their hatred. You carry this weight whether you want to or not, Ayanna said. This badge is proof of who you were. Proof of what you allowed. Kaya leaned forward, her eyes sharp. And today you choose. You face Morrison, or you die a coward all over again. The hunters had become the hunted. He stood and walked into the main room where both sisters waited by the dying fire. His boots scraped against the wooden floor, each step echoing like a verdict. I've carried this in silence for 15 years, Gideon said, his voice low. Every bottle of whiskey, every sleepless night, every mile I put between me and San Felipe, it was all running from you, from the dead, from myself. The sisters did not move, their eyes fixed on him. I told myself I was only a coward, he continued, that my crime was weakness. But maybe you're right. Maybe my silence was louder than a gunshot. Maybe it killed more than I ever did. Kaya's jaw tightened. It did. Ayanna leaned closer. So what do you do now, lawman? What verdict do you pass on yourself? Gideon's hand brushed the revolver at his side, but he didn't draw it. He sank into the chair instead, staring at the floorboards as if the answers were carved there. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe I've already been sentenced. Maybe every breath since that night was punishment. The room fell silent. The fire crackled. The morning wind slipped through the cracks in the walls. Ayanna spoke at last. You're not finished yet. Morrison still breathes. Until his blood stains the ground, the dead of San Felipe will not rest. Neither will we. Gideon looked up, meeting their eyes. The truth was no longer a weight. It was a weapon. And he knew there was only one way left to use it. We tracked down some of the other drifters who were there that day, Ayanna said. The men who rode with Morrison. Most are dead now. But Morrison himself, he thrives. He built his fortune on the ashes of San Felipe. Gideon's stomach nodded. The name alone was enough to sour his blood. Where is he? Kaya's lips curled into something between a sneer and a smile. Not far. He's camped 2 valleys east, waiting out the storm with his men. We followed them here. We knew we'd find you close. The air in the cabin thickened. Gideon could almost hear the hoofbeats, smell the smoke of their fires, feel the shadow of Morrison pressing against his skin. "You've been hunting me as much as him," Gideon muttered. Ayana's eyes were cold. "We came for justice. Whether you die as his partner," she paused, letting the words bite deep, "or live as our ally, that is your choice." Gideon rose, his chair scraping against the floor. For years he had imagined confronting Morrison, but never like this, with ghosts standing beside him, demanding blood. The firelight flickered across the sisters' faces, their expressions carved from stone. Gideon realized that no matter what happened next, none of them would leave this valley unchanged. Tomorrow would not bring peace. It would bring judgment. The sound of approaching horses reached them before noon. The sisters had been right. Morrison was near. Dust rose in the distance, and the metallic clink of spurs carried through the still air. Gideon tightened his holster, every nerve in his body alive with dread and fire. For years he had dreamed of this moment, and for years he had feared it even more. Ayana handed him a rifle. "No more running," she said. Kaya moved to the window, her eyes sharp as an eagle's. 6 men, maybe 7. Morrison rides at the front. Gideon's mouth went dry. He could picture Morrison's face, the grin, the scar across his cheek, the eyes that had watched San Felipe burn without a flicker of remorse. The hoofbeats grew louder until the cabin walls seemed to shake with their rhythm. Gideon stepped outside, the sisters flanking him like avenging spirits. Morrison reined in his horse a few yards away. His voice carried across the open air, smooth and mocking. "Well, I'll be damned." Deputy Flint still breathing. "I thought guilt would have buried you long ago." Gideon said nothing. His hand rested on the revolver at his side, steady for the first time in years. Ayana's voice rang out, fierce and unbroken. "This is the end, Morrison. For San Felipe, for our family, for every soul you burned." Morrison smirked, spitting into the dirt. "Family?" He glanced between the sisters, then back at Gideon. "You never told them, did you, Flint? You never told them the truth." The sisters froze. Gideon's heart hammered. "Hello, Uncle," Ayana said, her voice steady as stone. "We've been looking for you." "You killed our brother," Kaya said, her voice trembling with 15 years of suppressed rage. "You stood there while Morrison put a bullet in him." "You let it happen." Gideon's chest felt as if it were caving in. He remembered the boy. A flash of dark eyes, a scream cut short, the echo of a gunshot that had never stopped ringing in his head. He had buried that memory so deep he thought it could never surface again. But now it rose, merciless and whole. "I tried to save him," Gideon rasped, the words tasting like ash. "I swear to God I tried. Morrison had the shotgun. If you moved, Kaya cut in. "You might have died with him, but at least you would have died with honor. Instead, you let him burn." The world seemed to tilt. Gideon staggered under the weight of her words. For 15 years he had told himself that silence was survival. But to them, silence had been betrayal. Ayana's eyes narrowed. "Do you feel it now? The blood on your hands? The lives lost because you chose fear?" Gideon looked down at his trembling hands. They weren't stained, not in any way he could see. But he felt the blood, warm, thick, impossible to wash away. His voice cracked. "You think I don't suffer every day? You think I don't hear the screams when I close my eyes? I've been living in that fire for 15 years. And maybe you're right. Maybe I should have died there too." Kaya's face was wet with tears, but her voice was steel. "Then die here. Die now. Or make it mean something." Gideon closed his eyes. For the first time, he didn't argue. He didn't beg forgiveness. He only nodded. "I'm saying something now." Morrison went for his gun. But Gideon was ready. 15 years of hesitation burned away in a single heartbeat. His revolver cleared leather, and the shot rang out like thunder over the valley. Morrison jerked back in the saddle, his smirk twisted into shock before he tumbled into the dust. The other riders froze, their courage shattering the moment their leader hit the ground. Some fled. The few who stayed met the sisters' rifles and fell where they stood. The gunfire ended as quickly as it had begun. Smoke drifted through the air, mingling with the scent of blood and gunpowder. Gideon stood in the silence, chest heaving, the revolver still smoking in his hand. Ayanna and Kaya stepped forward, their faces grim but unbroken. For the first time since San Felipe, their eyes no longer burned with only rage. There was something else there. Relief. Release. Gideon dropped to his knees beside Morrison's body. He didn't feel triumph, only a hollow ache, a weight finally shifting but leaving him raw and empty. "It's done," he whispered. "After all these years, it's done." The sisters said nothing. They didn't need to. The wind carried their silence like a prayer for the dead. That night, in the cabin, Gideon stared into the fire. The storm had passed, the valley lay quiet, and for the first time in 15 years, the ghosts of San Felipe loosened their grip. When sleep finally came, it was deep and dreamless. And for the first time in 15 years, Gideon Flint slept peacefully through the night.